Relief supply shortages in Syria are forcing many survivors of Monday's devastating earthquake to spend nights in freezing temperatures.
Seeing the wall crack this badly, I'm scared, so I will continue to spend the night in the park, no matter how cold it is, rainy, snowy, or even a tsunami here in Aleppo. My children and I would rather live in the park instead of being buried. I thought I could make a simple temporary tent, so I bought some nylon ropes and plastic sheets tied to iron columns so that there will be less of a cold wind when my children slept.
Scores of people are left homeless and risk illness and other problems. Essential humanitarian relief items such as tents are not available for the survivors. The natural disasters multiplied the tragedy Syrians have been going through over a decade due to the foreign-backed militancy and Western sanctions. Curbs imposed by the United States and its Western allies have complicated international efforts to assist quake-hit Syrians. The U.S. has so far refused to lift the sanctions despite repeated calls from Damascus and the international community. For more on that, we're now joined by geopolitical analyst and human rights activist Ryan Dawson, who's with us from Osaka. Mr. Dawson, welcome to the program. We're talking about relief supply shortages in Syria. This has all been exacerbated now due to the United States sanctions implemented by Washington and its Western allies. It's also, on many accounts, complicated international efforts for getting assistance in to Syria as well. Walk us through what's exactly taking place right now, and how can these sanctions remain in place at such a time of tragedy?
Well, we should remember that Syria was suffering before the earthquake. They've had great economic suffering from sanctions, mainly imposed by the United States and its Western allies. And for a smidgen of the aid that the U.S. gave to neo-Nazis in Ukraine, they could provide tents, let's say, for the homeless or temporarily homeless in Syria. The excuses are all being said, well, we'd like to give money and aid, but we can't because we all know the Assad regime will just spend that on itself and not distribute that, Well, you don't even have to send money. They could be sending direct aid, such as tents and supplies, but they're not going to do this. It's just a flimsy excuse. They want to punish Syria. They've been trying to starve them out, as they did to Iraq. And that, unfortunately, that areas in Afrin and Manbij and Aleppo have been devastated by the quake, as it was in Turkey. But the difference is you can get aid to Turkey. You can't get aid to Syria, at least from Western nations, but they won't allow it. But some of their Arab allies and Russia allies are able to get aid into Syria, and it is being distributed to those who need it. But the U.S. is making everything more difficult and more expensive. You can't even use PayPal to Syria. They will ban your account.
Mr. Dawson, it's not just Syria. There are a number of other countries that are facing similar difficulties, specifically when it comes to humanitarian situations and conditions. Do you think that there should be some sort of international mechanism in times of need, like we're seeing right now, where the international community should just bypass the U.S. sanctions?
Yes, I'm glad you brought that up. I mean, that never should have happened to Iraq in between the two wars. You had hundreds of thousands of people starving, mostly children. You have a dire situation. You've had a dire situation in Yemen for a long time that could be fixed so easily and so quickly that Western nations have the money to do it. They have the food to do it. It could be resolved in weeks if they wanted that to happen. But the U.S. has so much economic and military leverage that a lot of other nations can see what's going on, and they are unwilling to go or challenge the United States.
All right, thanks a lot. Ryan Dawson joining us from Osaka.